from what you painted, you can feel that you're in the driver's seat of your life. And it was a very invigorating conversation. It was like mind-boggling, everything that you've mentioned. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we have the amazing Dr. Tanya Wansom. She is an infectious disease physician. She is a coach for mid-career professionals, and she is also a global health consultant. And I'm so delighted to hear about her journey and share it with you. So Dr. Tanya, welcome to the channel.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
You have your own YouTube channel, which we're going to link down below. I love what you do there. And we're going to make sure to say, please subscribe and let us know what other topics you want both of us to cover, because I think that you have some really great insights to some much needed topics.
Thanks so much, Jillian. I also just wanted to say that I'm grateful for everybody who's watching from anywhere, because we are on opposite sides of the earth. So I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand, and I know Jillian is in Texas. I think she's in Texas right now anyway.
Yep, that is accurate. That is accurate. Yep. So, and thank you for that shout out to everyone around the world. I'd love for you to share your journey with us.
Sure. So I have a really interesting journey, I think, that may have some resonance with some people who may be watching and thinking about doing something a little bit different. So I had really traditional academic medicine aspirations and a career path. So after I got my MD, I did internal medicine residency and then infectious diseases fellowship. But during med school, I actually took a lot of time off. And even before medical school, engaging in different types of global health work and research, mostly around HIV and viral hepatitis. And much of that global health work was based in Thailand. So even going into infectious diseases, and it was like a driving force for me to go and choose that career path, was trying to incorporate some element of global health and global health work into my career. So after internal medicine residency and fellowship, or during fellowship, I applied for an internal grant they had at my institution at the time. I was at Johns Hopkins, and they offered a PhD in clinical research. So I was like, this is a perfect, opportunity for me, since I want to do academic medicine. I want to do research and teaching and clinical care. And so I embarked on that journey, getting my PhD in clinical research during my infectious diseases fellowship, and trying to combine some of the work, clinical work and research work I do around HIV, viral hepatitis, and then marginalized populations. So I work a lot with injecting drug users or people who use drugs in general, and sexual minorities such as LGBT populations and other people, maybe sex workers or other marginalized populations. And so my PhD was on HIV and viral hepatitis and some inequities in both Baltimore and Bangkok. So I got to combine my work there. And I was totally on the path. So I won this internal grant, this K, to fund, both my PhD, but also my initial years as junior faculty at Hopkins. And so I was like, I am on this path. Everything is like going the way that I had planned. I'm going to check off all these boxes, and then I'm going to arrive at some professorship in the future, and maybe write grants or find some way to incorporate global health work into my portfolio. But then after, I think it was like my last year of fellowship, or no, it was my first year of junior faculty, many people in Thailand knew that I loved working in Thailand. I was trying to find like ways that I could contribute or pathways to collaborate. A job opportunity came up, and so I was recruited quite heavily for this job with the U.S. military HIV research program. So I remember the director of the program was on leave, or TDY. I don't even know what TDY stands for.
Former military, that's right.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. So he was at Rare in Maryland, and he actually came to my house, tried to talk to my husband and I, now Colonel, and then he was going to be, my potential boss, really trying to sell the program to me and being like, this is a great opportunity, you should come. And I was like, yeah, but, I have a really good pathway here, I think. But really resonated with me. And then just talking with my husband, I also was pregnant at the time, and we were like, you know what? I felt like it was maybe a once in a lifetime opportunity. This was like the time to go. It was supported, there was opportunities to collaborate with both US and then also in Thailand. And so after much soul searching, we decided to make the leap. And so I actually returned the remainder of my grant, which was difficult to do. I think maybe many of us are like people pleasers in a way. And so I felt that I was disappointing all the people who had supported me, my mentor who had, helped me through all of residency and fellowship, with the applications, with everything, and who, was my mentor. And then even my chair, because he was like, actually, they weren't like, what are you doing? I think they're both amazing mentors in the fact that they were like, this is opportunity, this is, what is potential for you and what's not. And I think one thing that people should think about, this is a sidebar, sorry, but for academic medicine, I think it's really actually hard for academic people in academic medicine who have been there their entire career to advise people on anything that's possible outside of academic medicine because they haven't ever done anything except that one thing. So of course, like that is the path, and that's the path that they chose and, would want to encourage their mentees to do. So I think it's actually very hard for them. And I would give kudos to my mentors because even though they had no experience, they definitely would not give me an answer one way or another or try to sway me to be like academic medicine is the only way. And so I felt supported, to make my own decision. But I think that people who are thinking about leaving in academic medicine should definitely try to talk to people who are not in academic medicine or maybe have left academic medicine just to get a different perspective. Because I think sometimes, you're in a bubble where you're like your little goldfish bowl and you just talk to the other goldfish that are there. And so it's really hard to get a grasp of like, what could life be like outside this bubble. So I didn't actually have a really good idea and I didn't talk to that many people, but I was like, I'm going to do it, make the leap. So that was 7 years ago. So I've been in Bangkok, since that time. And I don't have that same job anymore. And so I've definitely reinvented myself or found alternative pathways, which I'm super excited to talk to you about, like in consulting or otherwise. But I think that is the first step was leaving the academic medicine bubble and also at the same time leaping to like live and work in another country.
Did your family live in Thailand at that time that you?
No. Oh. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to talk about. So my parents are both immigrants from Thailand during the physician/nurse shortage in the 1970s. Thailand was one of the countries where they heavily recruited people to come and gave like green cards and visas. Like it was easier to go to the US if you were a physician or a nurse. So my dad's a physician and my mom's a nurse. And so they both were able to immigrate to the US in the 1970s. And then I was born in the 1980s in the US. One interesting thing that I learned and was not the driving reason that I wanted to return to Thailand, but my uncles, who are also in medicine, so I come from a family of medicine, had talked to me about how the majority of their class, at that time there were 3 or 4 medical schools in Thailand, maybe 5, but like 90% of their class left and went to the US because, obviously there's like more opportunities there, both like financial, but also like educational, everything, right, is compared to Thailand at that time. Thailand, would invest in their medical students. So you would have to pay, but it would be minimal. And then you're expected to pay back basically in service. So it's kind of like some of the programs that there are in the US if you like work in an underserved area or whatever. But in Thailand, like everybody had to do that, or you had to pay back like the cost of medical education, which I think was like out of reach for most people, unless you were like from an ultra wealthy family, or if you went to the US and you made like a US salary, then with the exchange rate and stuff, you're like, oh, I can easily pay this back. But I think talking about brain drain and how they lost like generations of physicians. And so they're like, okay, go to medical school here. It's after high school here. So it's 6 years. and then they would maybe do a year of service, and then they would be like, yeah, America looks way, more promising. And for a time, it would be like 95% of their class would just leave, and they would be like, okay, well, we expected to have X many interns, but now there are like 5 doctors left for our country.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think that was one of the reasons that I thought about, trying to, I know some people call it like reverse brain drain, but trying to contribute in some way, like in Thailand, because I thought it could be, a unique opportunity as like a Thai American to do that.
That's awesome. And I also feel that your journey, not only in academic medicine, but what we hear a lot with the pushback and people that are saying things about people who take alternative paths, there's like a lot of scarcity mindset or a lot of doubt and things like that because they've never really leaned into exploring other options outside of medicine, or they feel a lot of fear from going down a path that has some uncertainty. And I love that you leaned in full force, and I can't wait to hear more about how that went for you.
Yeah, so I love that you brought up scarcity mindset, because I think a lot of people have that, especially in the US. I think one of our challenges as a society is there's not great safety net. And then, as doctors, we all know it's employer-based health insurance. And so I think that we are all taught to believe that, if you're employed in some capacity, as a full-time physician, whether or not that's clinical care or not, like, even in doing research or whatever your pathway may be, or pharma, anything, having a full-time physician equals security, like you're going to be okay. You have health insurance, you have your 401k, or, whatever all the benefits are. And so I had all that with the initial job I moved here for. Unfortunately, like it wasn't a great fit for me. I definitely learned a lot, but I was, as a civilian and with no like previous experience being in a military structure, I found it difficult to navigate and like really understand how the structures worked or how the Department of Defense works, or research like within a military context. So like it's really different, as I'm sure Jill, from academic medicine. So I think there are definitely so many structures in academic medicine too, but I felt like I understood like the process there, and it was difficult for me to understand the process where I was, and maybe also relinquish some, of the quote unquote independence that you might have had, like deciding research questions or what to focus on maybe in academic medicine. And so initially, this wasn't on paper in my contract at all, but when I had come to the program here, they had asked for like a verbal commitment of, 3 years. And they were like, okay, you can go there for 3 years, and then most likely there will be a position back in DC area or Maryland, for you to come back to if this resonates with you, et cetera. So I was like, okay, well, this is like an alternate, career path, and it's stable, and I'm going to be employed. I'm going to have my benefits, et cetera. But of course, like funding is never stable. And so even though they asked me for a 3-year commitment, and in my head, I was like, of course, like I'm going to be there for 3 years, and then I'm going to come back to the US and I'm going to have a job. Maybe like a year and a half or 2 years into it, it might have been a year and a half into it, they basically told me like there is no funding left for this program, even though it's been a program that we've been, like investing in for over 20 years. We're going to shut down a bunch of sites here and basically like eliminating your position or maybe replacing it with like a local part-time position. And can we pack you up, like send movers to your house next week and send you back to the US, and like that's it. Like there isn't, there isn't a job for you back in the US.
This makes me so sick. So for people that are interested in military jobs, it seems so secure. And what you said, I'd like to highlight, because we think sometimes they join the military. People are listening before they do medicine or dentistry or something where they think, oh, I'll exchange military service. The lack of autonomy and the reduced autonomy is something that you mentioned that is strongly needed to be considered, because you become owned by the military. And I was discharged medically. So I signed a 13-year contract and I got medically discharged in 4.5, even though my command said, oh, they're never going to discharge you. I just finished medical school. And you always have to be prepared, like have a soft backup plan. And I'm sorry it happened to you, but it's an expectation. Like, I guess I'm a little bit more of a catastrophizer. So I think things won't work out. So I have plan A through Z. But when it leaves people blindsided and just at a loss for words that happened, but it's also like, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. After my experience, I am less surprised, and I want to make it clear to the audience too that I was a contractor. So, I wasn't serving in the military, or I didn't join the military, like I was civilian, for sure. But I was a bit blindsided, even though, people talk about like there are budgets, decisions every year. Yeah, it was a bit blindsiding to me, and it was a very short period of time. I think I found out, I remember it was like October and it was December, like when they were like, your last day is December 31st. And so that was like and then they were like, yes, and can you move like back to the US tomorrow? And I was like, no, like we don't have a place to live. We had a house that we were renting at the time, but I was like, but we're not going to kick out like our renters, like they've signed a lease and we don't have, my husband, could have, gotten back to his job, but I was like, I don't have a job, so I don't want to move somewhere and then just be like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. So I think for me, that was like a huge wake up call in a way, but it was also like a time, like I know your channel is called Permission to Pivot. It was the time that like forced me, I think, to pivot. So I think, initially I already had made the leap. I was like, okay, I'm in Thailand, but really forced me to reconsider, like, what am I doing? Do I want to be here or not? Can I go back to academic medicine and beg them to take me back? Like, and apply for another grant. What should I do? But it was the middle of the year. It's like a kind of weird time. So I just actually looked around. I didn't have a plan, but I was like, let me look around. And because it's the middle of the year, my son was in school. I was like, I don't want to just like leave and not have any sort of plan. I found this local job that actually resonated, with my roots, I think, and where I came from. So there was a newly launching study to look at testing and treating drug users in the community. It was like the first community-based study for testing and treatment of people who use drugs. It was funded by the Global Fund for AIDS, TB, and malaria. And they were like, we need somebody to run this. And it's starting like right now, tomorrow. The salary was something that I really had to wrap my head around. And so it was less than I got paid as like a resident. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this right now because I do want to get back to, something that like really resonates with me, where I'm like excited to go to work every day. I feel like I can make a big impact. And yeah, the salary is not, what I would expect as like fellowship trained physician, but let me just like see if it opens any doors and like what will come out of that. So actually that study has like wildly successful. Like 3 years later, we, received more grant funding to do that. And I stayed on full time there for like a year and a half, really getting it off the ground. But then after a while, I was like, yeah, this is not sustainable for, just like our family and the goals that we have. So we had saved money from when I was with the military research program, and also they did give me severance, which I was thankful for. And I think it's something that people should negotiate if they can, and also like COBRA, like all these things that you can negotiate. But then like after a while, like, yeah, just getting more well-known in different spaces, speaking at different events related to the work that I was doing, and just letting people know, that I'm open to do different kinds of work. I eventually was like approached to do different jobs. So some of the things that I've done since then, and then later I was approached to do enough jobs that I could transition and just become a completely independent consultant. So I still work on that project. It's called C Free, the study, and we've actually treated over 1,000 people in Thailand and cured them of Hep C, which is awesome because they wouldn't otherwise have treatment. And it's expanding now to many other centers throughout Thailand. So I'm still really excited about that work and energized by it. But then some other cool work that people may be interested in as possible, pathways is in clinical research. I serve as a medical monitor. So that's basically looking at safety and like adverse events. So one of the trials I work with here is with a new drug for gonorrhea. We haven't had a new drug for gonorrhea forever, and there's antibiotic resistance increasing in many locations, including the US, against ceftriaxone. So there's a new drug called zoliflodacin. It's in a phase 3, so it's a huge multinational trial, actually. And right now, we're closed to recruitment after a few years, but I basically supported all the Thai sites in getting started. And then I would also answer questions and review data, et cetera, from the US sites. And I was recently in San Francisco actually visiting one of the sites for that study. So I do that. I am about to embark on this malaria trial as a medical monitor and implementation research. So looking at high dose primaquine in these community-based settings to treat malaria in Indonesia. And what else do I do? Oh, sometimes I do cool like educational workshops or lessons like learn from our community work in Thailand. So we're really many community-based organizations here for marginalized populations do really awesome, like innovative work, and just trying to support other countries in the region. So in Vietnam, I also help some of the local clinics try to start screening for STIs and pooling samples. So basically, most of the time in the US, every individual sample is run individually, but that's actually like really cost increasing, and you can pool samples together to save cost, but still get the results that you need to effectively like screen and treat people. And so I was invited to Vietnam to basically help talk to them about their protocol and how they can use some of the technology or some of the processes that we use here in their setting. So those are some of the things that I do now as an independent consultant. And there's always enough work. That's what I wanted to say about scarcity mindset.
Yeah.
So I think initially I was freaked out. I was like, I'm going to become an independent consultant. Which to me was like, there is no security whatsoever. Anytime anybody asks me to do anything, it doesn't matter. Like if I'm already working like 150 or 1.5 FTE, I must say yes to them. And, I just have to like figure it out with my schedule. So one of the things that I took on that ended up being successful, but it was not successful for my, I think, mental health and just like capacity to show up in any other part of my life was there was like a COVID-19 grant that was due, and they were like, you don't have somebody to write this. You are a native English speaker. You can like speak to all the stakeholders in Thai. Can you work with like this other person and turn this 40, ended up being like, I think in the end they were awarded like close to $30 million, but it was like less than 1 month. And they're like, for our country. So then I was like, of course, like I want to help my, the country and do all of this. But I was like, this is crazy. I'm like, you can't be like, turn it around. We did turn it around, but I feel like it took definitely years off my life. And I'm sure anybody who has written a grant definitely, right? Because they're like all the forms and this doesn't.
Yeah, I've written one, and I'm trying to write a K award, and it's very different in its language, and there's all the different parameters that you have to meet, and it's so constructed in a way that it's so regimented, and it's just like you could spend forever on it. It could be a never ending.
Like it can just be like it totally takes over your life. So
but that was a good experience. I wanted to highlight a few things because when you were in Maryland, you got recruited. So there was things that you did that people saw what you were doing and they said, she's the one that I want to seek out in order to do this job. What were you doing at the time that you were being recognized? Just kind of to point to the audience, like, we often hide and we think, well, why am I not getting noticed? Why am I not getting recruited? Well, what does it take to really stand out for someone to say, I'm going to recruit you?
So I think like the saying like your network is your net worth is really true in this situation, because I think a lot of the consulting jobs or, opportunities I've been approached for, even but aside from that one, is from personal relationships. So I think just building relationships with as many people as you can, and just letting people know, like what you're doing and maybe what you have to offer is really helpful. So I think for that, I had just number one, like kept in touch with my network from medical school. So some of the, one of the people that identified me, I hadn't talked to her in many years, but she was like, oh, I remember you were in Thailand and you were like really passionate about infectious disease research. Oh, you're like doing ID now. I didn't know, if you like ended up pursuing that or not. There might be this opportunity available if you're interested. So I think number one is just really keeping in touch with your network in any way that you can. So LinkedIn now is very popular, but and I know people have different feelings about Facebook, but I was, Facebook friends with some of these people and just like checking in on them, or they could see, like maybe what I was up to. And then taking the opportunity, I think, to go to different meetings. So, of course, like the academic medicine meetings were helpful to increase my profile, doing like posters or eventually like oral presentations at meetings that are related to your specialty or what you're interested in. But I think not even like of course, like we would, or not we would want to, but highlighting work that you've done there is like really helpful. But I think outside of the academic meetings, there were a lot of like community based meetings here, like in Thailand, that I had been involved in advocacy, for example. So before I was a doctor, I was an activist. And so really even just like cultivating those community relationships. So, some of the people that I work with here, I've now actually been working with them for almost 20 years. And they're like, we remember when you were pre-med and like volunteering to give talks about HIV and what that meant. And so I think that's really helpful. And then yeah, I think being really clear about your why, or what really resonates with you. I think people really feel like, or they can feel your passion for a certain subject.
Yes.
And finally, I would say, yeah, just keeping an open mind to hear about, what people have to offer. I've definitely not taken, well, later after I freed myself of scarcity mindset, was able to start saying no. But I think having an open mind and listening to what there is out there, rather than immediately being like, oh, I don't do that, or I don't have the skill set for that, or I've never done that, so that doesn't apply to me. I've been really pleasantly surprised at some of the things that I've been recruited for, like medical monitoring. I was like, I don't do that. Like, I've done clinical research, but I, don't have special training in safety. I think like as physicians, we often think we need to have like a degree or a
Yeah, a
certificate. Yeah.
PhD in safety.
Credentials.
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
totally.
And then they're like, no, like you just need to read the thing and be like, okay, is this plausibly related to, they're like, it's not rocket science. Like
Yeah.
you can do it
Yeah, when
with your
there's
experience. I was like, oh, I can.
you're absolutely, and some things also with scarcity, right? It's so when I left my first surgical residency and I was so I really needed a break, but I did not give myself one. And this is why I advocate for, I see it in what you did. You saw all these things, it's anxiety provoking. We want to just land a job to have a job, but you really sat with the anxiety and put your feelers out and expanded your outlook. So one thing I was envisioning as you were talking, like, wow, you took a survey of the land, whereas when we get anxious, we box ourselves in and then we go back to the traditional path that is secure. And when
Right.
I went from surgery to, I handed over my resignation and started my next residency the next day. And it worked out. It
Gosh,
was, you know, I really enjoyed my training, and but I was so burnt out. So I regret how I showed up every day. Not every day, but you know, I regret not giving myself a chance to really show up as my best self because I didn't rest and I was straight out of inpatient. It was not a great experience. But if people can just give themselves that chance and believe that if they can optimize their health and take a deep breath and really see what do I want to run towards rather than I'm just running away from the anxiety of scarcity and I have to land a job and oh my gosh. Because then when I got my next job, it wasn't a right job. That's where when I left that job, I was actually applying. You were saying, you know, you got a job that maybe wasn't the income you were looking for, but in your mind, you said, what doors can this open? I was applying to entry level grocery store jobs just to like have a job. And I realized that was irrational at some point, not because I think those jobs are beneath me. They just weren't going to sustain I'm an independent adult, right? They weren't going to allow me to pay all my bills. So it's like, I need to stop and sit with the anxiety and really sit with what I need to do next. And your passion does show through because you're so invigorated and saying everything that you do. And it's so precious to me because I actually had an uncle that passed away from AIDS. So when you say that, like, it's so meaningful for me as a personal, you know, I have a personal loss from that, and I appreciate what you do. And how did you find what you were passionate about? How does that resonate with you?
So I think like we can be passionate about so many things. And sometimes I think, it's easy to be like, well, I said I was passionate about this and like this is the only pathway, or like I must, do XYZ because I put all my eggs in one basket. And
Yeah.
what if I don't like it anymore, or,
Yeah.
it might not resonate with me. So I think in a way, like academic medicine was like that for me too, because I was like, oh, but I love teaching. And now, am I teaching anymore? Not in the traditional sense, but I'm like, teaching, I think, in other senses, to the community or to individual like patients or clients that come to these centers. So I think how I most recently dipped into my passion is like, or reconnected with my passion is trying to go back to like the values, I think, that I really want to embody and resonate with me, and then try to find how like work could, align with those values. So I think that's really how it resonated with me. So I think one of my overarching values, like from college age, is social justice, or trying to address inequities in health through my work. And so that can take on so many different pathways, or it can be, there are so many different flavors of doing that. It doesn't have to be any one way. And so I think like, yeah, just dipping into what really drives you, or what you not necessarily like want to accomplish, but I think like, yeah, how do you want to show up in the world in general, or what kind of impact are you thinking that you want to make in your life, is more helpful to me, I think, in my own journey, rather than being like, well, I need to publish X many papers and I need to get this degree, and then I need to speak on this stage only as like a plenary speaker. I mean, I think those are still really good goals, and some of them I still have, but I think defining like my overall career or self-worth in that way was not really helpful to me.
Yeah, and you said something great there because we can still do those things, and often I say, you know, we don't want to focus on the outcome. That doesn't mean rid ourselves of the outcome. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm still going to work to publish papers, but I'm not going to have my self-worth, as you mentioned, depend on these papers. Or, you know, I like to publish papers that are deeply meaningful that I really want to present to the world. And in our current
right.
pressure, it's often quantity, and often that dilutes the quality. And I feel like that's out of integrity. And I feel like that conflict of my mind is, it's a values conflict. Like you said, I love that you focus on core values. because that's often, when people are conflicted and they're feeling out of their integrity and they don't know where to go. I think that's so important. And if we're stuck in people pleasing, we could have our core values can be very confusing to dissect. I think that's why it's important. And you work as a coach, and I'd love for you to share that, because when we have been in the hustle for so long, and we have been in the culture with societal pressures for so long, then our core values can be really blurred by societal pressures. And some of them may be in alignment and some of them may be out of alignment. Can you talk a little bit more about your coaching?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. So my channel and my coaching practice is called Catalyzing Clarity. So that's what I hope to accomplish with my clients. And one thing that I really want to help people with through coaching is just recognizing exactly all the stories that we're telling ourselves, or maybe stories that have been passed down to us through culture, through medicine, through our families and society just in general, and really helping people reclaim their own narratives and rewrite their own stories in ways that serve them. So I was not always really proud of my own career pathway. I was just like, oh, well, like I lost my job, so then I had to do this other job that didn't have like such a cool title. And then that wasn't really helping me or paying me like enough. So then I just, became a consultant and just accepted like whatever jobs that came to me. I was like, no, I think coaching just really helped me reframe my narrative to be, you forged like a really awesome career path, and, you're able to live out your life according to your values and also embrace the life that I want to live. So I was like, my life is awesome. And my career is awesome, and I'm fulfilled by it. I'm making a difference. And yeah, I get to contribute in like so many different ways. And so it took a long time actually for me to reclaim that narrative. So I think my coaching is really helping people identify the narratives that maybe are serving them or aren't serving them, and then rewriting the ones that they don't think are serving them. And then just like knowing your own value, I think on so many levels is so helpful, because in medicine, often, we're like, our value is board score, or what residency you are going to get into, or what are you doing next, or whatever. And so I think coaching, helping everyone discover their own value and then being able to carry that into so many different aspects, negotiations, relationships, professional life, moving away from scarcity mindset.
Your whole journey so far, it definitely seems like you're leaning into abundance mindset. I also think medical school or any any professional school really creates and substantiates the scarcity mindset. There's not enough residency spots. You have to get this grade or you won't succeed. You have to do this. And there's limited numbers. Not everyone can succeed. But in life, we all can succeed. Your success doesn't limit my success. And I feel in some environments, in some work cultures, there's a lot of toxicity when it comes to hoarding and not wanting others to succeed because it's a competitive culture. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I love how it can, from what you painted, it really, you can feel that you're in the driver's seat of your life. And it was a very invigorating conversation. It was like mind-boggling, everything that you've mentioned. And it really energized me as like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I love what you're doing. And like, I wonder in like a way of how can I take the skills that you have developed and really learn from them in my own life, where I definitely hold myself back. I am definitely scared to lean in. And when you even consider, like, you moved all the way to Thailand and you didn't have family there at the time, but you do now, right?
Yes. My parents they're retired, so they winter here. Like if you're from the Midwest, many elderly people winter in Florida.
I
Yes, exactly. So like snowbirds, right? So instead of going to Florida, they come to Bangkok because we're here now. And it's good for them too. I mean, they have extended family and stuff, but when we were growing up, just because they were working so much and it's like so far, we we didn't come back like at all, actually, when I was growing up. I think the first time I came to Thailand, I was 13 years old. And then I came back once again when I was like 17 or 18. But then since that time, I've spent way more time in Thailand.
Wow.
My parents were like, we never expected this. You know, they're like, we moved to Michigan and then you moved back to Bangkok
That's
as an
mind-boggling.
adult.
For people who want to get in touch with you for coaching, how can they get in touch with you?
So they can email me. My email is first initial T and my last name Wansom, WAN as in Nancy, SOM as in Mary, at chayanconsulting.com.
I will definitely post both your channel and your email below so that they can get in touch with you. And do you have any last words you'd like to leave with the audience?
I would say you can, rewrite your story any way that you want it. And that's really empowering, but also really scary at sometimes. So I think I would really just leave you with, just think about like the stories that you're telling yourself about anything like your job, your current situation, your relationships. And if you want to rewrite one of them or it's not serving you, please reach out. I'd love to talk to you more about it.
And I also think for reaching out to you, we think we can identify that in ourselves, but we have massive blind spots and we get in the same cycle. So it's really important, I think, to work with someone to say, here's what I'm thinking, so that they can help you to see where maybe your thoughts have some errors, or you can challenge your thoughts and just see it from a different perspective. Because I think often I hear people even that are coaches and they try to coach themselves. I've been there and I play the same narrative and
Yeah.
the same stuff until
No, exactly. I had this exact same narrative about my career and transitioning to consulting, and it's not as good as an employed or a secured position. And then, yes, coaching definitely highlighted to me, and being in different communities, and yeah, just talking to different people. Sometimes even like outside of your own profession, because I talked to one of my friends who's a lawyer. And she was like, your job is awesome. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, oh, but I'm not a faculty at any medical school. And she was like, what?
And that's so
Right?
one thing someone said to me that really helped me when I was struggling to leave surgery, even though I was very suicidal and I was struggling to leave surgery. And part of it was an identity thing. I thought I needed to do surgery.
Yeah. Like, who am I if I'm not this?
Yeah. And he was a psychologist at the time. And he goes, I couldn't tell you who the most famous oral surgeon was. And I'm like, neither could I. Like, no one actually knows what you do unless you tell them. Like, I'm a marathon runner and people often say, oh, how far did you run? Like, no one cares. We think this matters so much more than it often does. And what matters is that you live the life that you truly want. And when I was a surgical resident, I couldn't be there for the ones I loved. I had an extraordinary values conflict, and I lost my ex-boyfriend during that time, which is what has been the foundation for my decisions today. Is like, we don't want people to hit a rock bottom or to lose people to wake up. We want them to be in that messy middle and still be able to choose better, right? Because when we're in the messy middle, it's so comfortable. We can just say, oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not that bad, but it could be better. But
Yeah.
thank you so much.
And it's never too late, I think.
Yeah,
I think some people are like, oh, well, I already spent however many years of life like being like this. And it's like, okay, exactly what you said. It's not terrible, or maybe it is terrible, but it can be better, which is, I think, really amazing.
And I know we could talk about a million more topics, so this definitely won't be the last time you're invited on this channel. And I appreciate you so much for being here, especially on the other side of the world.
Thank you, Jillian.
And thank you to the audience for being here. Of course, we'll put Dr. Tanya's contact information below, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.